Okay, so these are called rate times time equals work problems. They're similar to the last ones, but they're not exactly like the last ones. So on this first example, one painter can paint an entire house in 12 hours. The second painter takes 8 hours to paint the same entire house. How long would it take the two painters together to paint the house? So let's call this dude painter 1. Let's call this dude painter 2. Painter 1, now I'm going to kind of work over here at the side, and you're going to see why. He's going to do the work of one house in 12 hours. That makes my rate one house in 12 hours. So now I'm not going to use this 12 anymore. So let's move on to the second painter. The second painter takes 8 hours to to paint one house. So his rate is one house in 8 hours. And I'm not going to use this anymore either. We want to know how long. So we actually want to know the time when they're working together. So the time, rate times time, working with painter 2's rate times time to equal the total of one house. So this was the work of 1 plus the work of 2 equals the total amount of work. So their total amount of work was one house. The first person can do 1 out of 12 in a certain amount of time. The second one can do 1 out of 8 in a certain amount of time. How much together? So we add them together. So using the N over D button, so the N over D button on the calculator will be your friend with this type of problem, because we're going to work with these with fractions just because it's a little bit easier. So you take 1 over 12 plus 1 over 8, and the calculator tells you that that's 5 over 8t equals 1. And then we know from one-step equations that you can take both sides times the reciprocal. Those will cancel. T is equal to 8 over 5 hours. Or if we want to be happier about it, we can say 1.6 hours. Either one of those would be acceptable. So let's look at our next problem here. Suppose that it takes Janet 6 hours, to paint her room if she works alone, but it takes Carol 4 hours to paint the same room if she works alone. How long if they work together? They're going to paint the same room. So we're going to call this Janet. We're going to call this Carol. Janet takes 6 hours to do one room, so her rate is 1 out of 6. 1 room in 6 hours. Carol takes 4 hours to paint one room, so she can do one room in 4 hours. Now remember, we really want the time together, so we're going to mark those out and make those T, because we want to know the work of Janet, so that's rate times time, plus the work of Carol, so that's rate times time, to equal one room that they're painting together. So using that N over D button on your calculator, you get 5 over 12t equals 1. Take both sides times the reciprocal, and that cancels. So t equals 12 over 5. Or we can put that as a decimal. 2.4 hours. Okay, so this last one, we're going to end with just a little bit more difficulty than what we started with. One garden hose can fill an above-ground pool in 10 hours. The second hose can fill the pool twice as fast as the first one. If we use them together, how many hours will it take? So we're going to call this hose 1. We're going to call this hose 2. And the first hose in 10 hours can fill one pool. So its rate is 1 out of 10. The second hose goes twice as fast. So that's 2 times 1 out of 10 times time to do one pool. So twice as fast, 2 times that. So the work of the first one, 1 out of 10, holy cow. 1 out of 10 times time plus 2 parentheses 1 out of 10 times time equals 1. So that's 1 out of 10 t plus 2 out of 10 t equals 1. So multiplying right there, 2 times 1. Add your like terms. So that's 3 out of 10 t equals 1. Take both sides times the reciprocal. So time is 10 over 3 hours. Or if you make that a decimal, you get 3.3 repeating. So I'm going to make it 3 1/3 hours. Okay, so that wraps it up for rate times time equals work. So remember, you're going to do the odd problems. I do want you to draw diagrams, and I want you to set up a chart. So we want diagrams and the chart, because both of those will help you in answering these. And then when you get down to, looks like we have Noya driving into the city again. Then once we get down to the review problems, as always, you want to complete all of those because we want to go back and make sure that we are answering all those questions on our next assessment well.